Hi, I'm Sam Wilmoth. I work at the West Virginia University Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I just want to say Happy SANE Day. I don't know if that's real, but it should be, because I have a lot of appreciation for SANEs, and I know if you're watching this video, you do too. I'm grateful to be here with you virtually, but I just want to take a moment and recognize how awful it is that we can't be in person, celebrating the great work that SANEs do and then coming together as a community to support survivors. And I don't just mean that because this is a good cause, although clearly it is. And I don't just mean that because Table 9's food is awesome, although clearly it is. I mean that because I look forward to Champagne for SANEs every single year. Every single year, I look forward to it. And specifically, I look forward to one moment that I usually just have privately to myself, where maybe there's a lull in conversation. I'm in a corner of the room at Table 9, and I start taking a silent inventory of all of the people in that small restaurant who specialize in doing quiet, often unheralded kindnesses for other people. It's a worthwhile exercise that I find really gratifying, really recharging. I just get to see you all. I get to be in the same room with you all and know that there is a shared purpose, and know that you all took a look at one of the most defining moral questions of our time, which is, how do we stop sexual assault? And you said, I want to do my part. There's an electricity in that, and I miss it. I miss you. So there are, of course, some short-term advantages to my absence, I suppose. One is that you can't see the back of my head and witness the unmitigated tragedy of my do-it-yourself haircuts. The other is that absence does tend to make the heart grow fonder in some ways. We start to recognize and feel even more grateful for the folks in our community who are doing awesome work. For folks like people who work at grocery stores, delivery truck drivers, and medical providers whom we have rightfully regarded in the past year as heroes. But then when I'm around SANEs, I kind of always feel that way, right? I didn't need some big world-stopping pandemic to remind me of that. And I think you probably feel that with them too. Now, here are some folks who have dedicated a huge amount of time to get training, often training that's not appropriately recognized by their employers, I should say, so that they can help trauma survivors. And so that they could put into practice one of the most basic insights about working with trauma survivors that I can think of, which is this. None of us know how we would respond to a terrible traumatic event until someday it happens. It's a thing that we repeat to ourselves a lot, in part to guard against the kind of creeping prejudice and judgment that some folks in our culture might have when they don't understand survivors' behavior, for example. But often that basic insight doesn't end up getting instantiated in the institutions we work in. So we say this to ourselves, oh gosh, we would never know how we would respond to this terrible thing unless it happened to us. But then we set up policies or procedures where there's only one way to recover. There's only one way to get help. And when I look at SANEs, I see the opposite of that. That even in a really difficult medical forensic exam, everything a SANE does involves a choice for a survivor of violence. It involves a conversation about boundaries. Right? Every procedure is optional. And because SANEs do things that way, they really live a kind of respect for trauma survivors that the rest of us should aspire to. because it is true that no one knows how they're going to respond to the worst event in their life until it happens. No one knows whether they'd feel most comfortable going through criminal justice kind of response, just a medical response, maybe a less formal response where you were talking to family members and healing that way, maybe going to a Title IX office and getting help there. No one knows what would feel good and what wouldn't until it happens. And so when SANEs provide this kind and respectful care that actually takes that insight into account, that is world-changing stuff. So I know that not every survivor of violence wants to go to a hospital, just as not every survivor of violence wants to come talk to someone like me. But what if at every possible decision point, we had professionals like SANEs who would give survivors choices, who would treat them with respect, who would take their trauma into account? What if every possible path to recovery had great folks like SANEs waiting there to offer help? It's maybe a small part of the solution. I want big changes to our culture so that all of us who do work connected to things like abusive relationships and sexual assault can just go find another job to do because we stop the violence from happening in the first place. But as a first step, I can't really think of anything better than having a support network that works. And gosh, do SANEs do that well. Every single one of them I know. So, it's in the middle of the workday in the afternoon, certainly not drinking champagne. But I kind of want to propose a toast here. I want to say that we should all raise our... I should have brought a glass for this. I didn't even think to get a glass of water. The cinematography here is terrible. I apologize. But if you could just raise an imaginary glass to SANEs, to the folks who decided, I want to do some intense training to do intensely important work. And just toast them in your mind. And also while we're at it, toast yourselves. Because if you're watching this video, or if you entered some kind of auction or raffle, or if you planned this virtual event under incredibly difficult circumstances, well, then what that says about you is that you are wanting to provide support too. So I wish we could all be together to honor the great work that SANEs do and to feel that rush of shared purpose, of support that we tend to feel when we're with our colleagues working towards the same goal. But until we can feel that again, I hope we can draw some lessons from SANEs and try to treat everyone with respect, try to defer to people who have had difficult experiences and let them make choices in our agency. And most importantly, to try to offer support in every way that we can, just as SANEs do. So I'm going to raise my imaginary glass and I'm going to say, to SANEs, y'all are wonderful. Thanks so much for all you do. And now I'm puzzled about whether I should drink this imaginary drink. Probably shouldn't. Anyway, I hope I can see you all soon. Thanks.